The maximum priority alarm echoed through the corridors of Unity Station, cutting the silence with its metallic urgency. Ambassador Elena Vasquez woke instantly. Her reflexes, honed over decades of diplomatic service, kicking in before she could fully process the sound. The holographic message flashed above her desk. Immediate convocation of the Galactic Council. 5 words that never appeared together. Not without reason. Elena donned her formal Earth Alliance uniform with precise movements, every synthetic fiber adjusting perfectly to her body. The fabric shimmered with a deep blue hue, incorporating nanotechnology that regulated temperature and monitored vital signs. At 62, she had negotiated trade treaties with the Thexali, mediated territorial disputes with the Veruum, and even managed to establish trade routes through the territory of the enigmatic Andromeda silicates. But a convocation of the full council was something she had never faced. The embassy vessel awaiting her was a masterpiece of human engineering. The HMS Diplomacy, equipped with third-generation antimatter drives and translation systems capable of simultaneously processing the complex languages of all 17 Council species. During the 3-hour journey to Zenith Station, the seat of the Galactic Council, Elena reviewed every available file on historical precedents. She found none that offered comfort. The Galactic Council had governed interstellar order for 50,000 Earth years. 17 ancient species, each with thousands of years of recorded history before humanity even developed writing. The archives showed they maintained peace through a complex system of treaties, zones of influence, and, when necessary, overwhelming demonstrations of military force. 3 million warships, according to the most conservative estimates of Earth intelligence. Humanity possessed 1,200. Zenith Station materialized in the vacuum like a cosmic jewel. Built around a dormant black hole, the megastructure defied human comprehension even after a century of contact. Concentric rings the size of planets spun in impossible orbits, held together by artificial gravitational fields that turned space-time into mere clay. Lights of a million different colors shone through crystalline structures that existed partially in other dimensions. Elena felt the familiar weight of human insignificance. Earth had reached the stars only 3 centuries ago. These civilizations were building empires when Elena's ancestors were still hunting mammoths. The council chamber was designed to intimidate, and it fulfilled its purpose with brutal perfection. The ceiling arched hundreds of feet high, displaying a holographic map of the entire galaxy. Every system, controlled by the Council, glowed gold. The 12 human systems were small, pulsating red dots, isolated like drops of blood in an ocean of light. The 17 council seats formed an elevated semicircle. Elena was guided to a solitary pedestal in the center, where artificial gravity held her perfectly still, exposed to the gaze of creatures who had witnessed the birth and death of stars. To her left, the Crystallis, entities of living silicon that thought in timescales measured in centuries. Their prismatic bodies refracted light into patterns that encoded language and emotion simultaneously. To the right, the Vordim, fluid organic masses contained in containment suits, each housing millions of symbiotic organisms operating as a single consciousness. Above, the synthetic intelligences of Proxima, ascended algorithms that existed as patterns of pure light, incomprehensible in their alien mathematics. And in the center, elevated above all, Cethysazar, the first among equals, an elder chrysalis whose internal structure contained records of 3 millennia of governance. When he spoke, his voice reverberated across all sensory spectra, instantly translated by Elena's neural implant. Ambassador Vasquez of the species designated humanity. You appear before the Galactic Council at a time of critical deliberation. The voice was like shattering crystals in harmony. Your species has been observed since you crossed the threshold of interstellar travel. 100 years of careful monitoring, 100 years of hope that you would be different. Elena maintained her upright posture, even as her heart raced. Different from what? First Cethysazar? A murmur ran through the assembly. Apparently interrupting was considered bold or stupid. Different from the Zaranth, from the Kalari, from the Drevmark. Cethysazar pulsed with a bitter red light. All young, vigorous, expansionist species, all promising cooperation, all eventually revealing their true nature, imperialists, conquerors, potential tyrants. Respectfully, first, humanity has not conquered any territory beyond uninhabited worlds. Elena replied, choosing each word with surgical care. Our treaties with smaller species have been mutually beneficial. We have not forced anyone under our dominion. Not yet. The voice came from a Vordim on the left, its component organisms visibly stirring within the suit. Your expansion has accelerated in exponential progression, from 3 systems to 12 in just 80 years. Your population has exploded from 15 billion to 40 billion. Your military fleet has quadrupled. Your research programs into advanced weaponry are moving in concerning directions. Elena felt ice run down her spine. They knew about the classified projects, about the hidden research bases, about technologies that should have been beyond any detection. Defensive developments, she argued. The galaxy contains threats, pirates, spatial anomalies, uncatalogued entities. It would be irresponsible not to prepare ourselves. Prepare for what? Cethysazar leaned forward, and Elena had the unsettling impression that he was studying not just her body, but her very soul through senses she couldn't even conceive of. The honest answer, Ambassador, is for us. For the Council, you believe we are your eventual opponents. The silence that followed was absolute. Elena forced herself to breathe normally, aware that every micro-gesture was being analyzed by intelligences that processed information millions of times faster than any human brain. The Council governs through superior force, she said finally. It is natural for independent species to develop means of ensuring their own sovereignty. Sovereignty? Cethysazar tested the word as if it were an archaic concept, a primitive ideal. The Council transcended such notions millennia ago. We guarantee order, stability, peace for trillions of beings across millions of worlds. And now you, representing a species barely out of its planetary cradle, suggests that this order is oppressive. No, Eleanor stopped, rephrasing. Every word was a minefield. Humanity values cooperation, but also self-determination. We believe both can coexist. History disagrees. One of the synthetic intelligences pulsed, its voice sounding like chanted mathematical equations. In 97% of documented cases, species with your psychological profile and technological trajectory became existential threats. The standard protocol is preemptive intervention. The words fell like hammers. preemptive intervention. Elena knew diplomatic euphemisms when she heard them. "The Council has reached a decision," César declared, his voice taking on a tone of irrevocable finality. "Humanity will be redesignated as a Class 3 protectorate, effective immediately. You will evacuate 9 of your 12 systems within 20 Earth years. Your military fleet will be reduced to no more than 120 defensive patrol vessels. Weaponry programs will be discontinued and submitted to Council inspection. Permanent representatives will be installed at all levels of your government to ensure compliance." Elena felt the ground disappear beneath her feet. Metaphorically, though, the artificial gravity kept her firmly anchored. Class 3 Protectorate. She knew the term. Species under permanent guardianship, with no voting rights in the Council, their technology and population rigidly controlled. Gilded cages for civilizations deemed too dangerous to be free. "And if we refuse?" The words escaped before she could stop them. The silence returned, but this time it was charged with something different. Surprise, perhaps, or recognition of a confirmed expectation. "Then you will confirm exactly what we fear," César replied softly. "And the containment protocol will shift from preemptive to active. Your species will be reduced to a single system. Your population limited to 5 billion. Your industrial capacity permanently restricted. This is the alternative, Ambassador. A larger cage or a smaller one. The choice is your species." "But still a cage," Elena murmured. "Security," César corrected. "For you and for the galaxy. You have 30 Earth days to transmit our decision and return with your government's formal acceptance." Audience adjourned. The pedestal began to descend. Elena was escorted out of the chamber in a daze, her mind reeling through the implications. 40 billion humans across 12 systems, building a civilization that had finally found its place among the stars. And now this. During the journey back, Elena stood alone in the observation lounge, staring out at the stars. Some part of her had always known this moment would come. Humanity was young, impetuous, dangerous in the eyes of civilizations that measured their ages in eons. But another part of her, the part that believed in the ideals Earth had exported to the colonies, refused to accept that freedom was a privilege granted only to the ancient and powerful. Her communicator flashed, an encrypted message from Fleet Command on Mars. 2 words only. "Do they know?" Elena typed her response with fingers that did not tremble, though they should have. "They know everything." The reply came in seconds. "Then we need a decision." Elena looked out the window again, seeing not the void between the stars, but the faces of 40 billion humans awaiting her answer. Colonists who had turned barren worlds into homes. Scientists who had pushed the limits of the possible. Children born under alien suns who had never known Earth, but called themselves human with pride. A cage or war. Protection or extinction. Her hand hovered over the communicator, the weight of the entire species on her shoulders. The General Assembly of Humanity met via holoconference broadcast, connecting the 12 colonial systems in a grid of representatives floating in virtual space. Elena remained in the center, a solitary figure surrounded by projected faces from every inhabited world. New Hope, with its geodesic domes shining under an orange sun. Eden Prime, whose bioluminescent forests flickered through the windows behind the delegates. Arcadia, Novus, Liberty, Horizon, each name a testament to human ambition, each now under sentence. They call it a protectorate. Elena concluded her report, her voice echoing through the instantaneous quantum channels. But the terms are unequivocal. We will abandon 9 systems. We will dismantle our fleet. We will accept alien supervisors at every level of government. Our research, our economy, our very population growth will be externally controlled, permanently. President Chen of Mars was the first to speak, his face showing the deep lines of one who had governed through 2 terraforming crises. And the alternative? Active containment, a single system, 5 billion humans, perpetual industrial restrictions. Elena paused, essentially forced regression to the pre-interstellar era, with surveillance ensuring we never attempt to expand again. The silence that followed was fragmented by dozens of simultaneous voices. Elena waited as the verbal chaos unfolded, watching the divisions form in real time. Governor Okonkwo of New Earth, the agricultural system that fed half of spacefaring humanity, raised a translucent hand for silence. We need to be realistic. 3 million ships against 1,200. They could sterilize us in a matter of weeks. Protectorate is humiliating, but extinction is final. Extinction is what they're offering us, only slower, replied Admiral Jackson, commander of the 3rd Fleet based in Liberty. His tone was controlled, but Elena could see the tension in his jaw. A maximum population of 5 billion? We are 40 billion. Where do the other 35 billion go? And don't tell me gradual relocation. That's genocide disguised as bureaucracy. No one is talking about accepting total containment, Chen quickly interjected. The Protectorate allows us to keep 3 systems. It's a drastic reduction, but manageable over 20 years. Manageable. The voice of Dr. Sarah Kowalski, scientific representative from Horizon, cut like glass. Do you know what happens to protectorates, President Chen? I studied all 53 cases in the Council archives. Not a single one was ever promoted back to autonomy. Not one. Once we accept the collar, it never comes off. Eleanor watched the factions crystallize. The pragmatists, led by Chen and Okonkwo, argued for survival at any cost. The resistors, gathered around Jackson and Kowalski, saw the protectorate as slow death. And in the middle, the silent, majority representatives of smaller colonies who simply wanted to know if their children would have a future. It was Commander Viktor Reznov, Director of Military Intelligence, who shifted the balance. There is a third option, he said calmly. His hologram expanded, taking central attention. But before I present it, I need authorization from the Security Council to disclose classified programs. Chen frowned. What programs? The ones the Galactic Council mentioned in their deliberation? Reznov looked directly at Elena. The concerning research they detected. Except they didn't detect everything. Not even close. Elena felt her pulse quicken. During the trip back, she had wondered how the Council knew about the black projects. But if Reznov was suggesting what she thought. 80 years ago, Reznov began after authorization was granted. When first contact was established, our intelligence identified a fundamental problem. The Council controlled the galaxy through absolute technological superiority. Any species that challenged them would simply be eliminated with tools against which they had no defense. So we initiated Project Prometheus. Holograms materialized around him. Underground facilities on remote asteroids. Laboratories built inside dead planets. Research stations camouflaged as mining depots. We developed technologies outside the conventional detection spectrum. Quantum propulsion, drives that leave no energy signature. Dimensional camouflage that bends light and gravity simultaneously. Spatial rupture weapons that the Council believed were theoretically impossible for a civilization at our level. Are you saying, Okonkwo interjected, disbelief coloring her voice, that we built a secret fleet? Not exactly. Reznov manipulated the holograms, showing schematics of ships that looked like they were made of impossible geometry. We built a doctrine, asymmetric warfare on a galactic scale. We cannot win a direct confrontation, but we can make the cost of subjugating us too high to be worthwhile. Admiral Jackson leaned forward, his eyes gleaming. Specify. Mass evacuation and territory denial. If the Council invades a system, they will find only traps. Entire cities equipped with antimatter charges programmed to detonate if enemy forces land. Small, fast ships built for space guerrilla warfare, not traditional line battles. And above all, Reznov paused dramatically, quantum rupture drones capable of hitting critical facilities in the heart of Council territory. You are talking about total war, Chen said slowly, against an empire that has existed for 50,000 years. I am talking about making our subjugation unacceptably expensive, about changing their strategic calculus. Reznov crossed his arms. The Council maintains order through intimidation. They have never faced real resistance because all species do the math and surrender. But what if we don't surrender? What if we prove that even a victory for them would cost trillions of credits, millions of alien lives, and the destabilization of their own empire? Elena processed the implications. You are betting they will back down rather than pay that price. I am betting they never expected to have to. 50,000 years of unquestioning obedience have made them complacent. They see 1,200 ships and assume easy victory. But war is not just about numbers, it's about will. And no species in the galaxy is more stubbornly, thoughtlessly willful than humanity. Kowalski smiled despite the gravity. You are proposing that we do exactly what they accuse us of being. Dangerous, unpredictable, willing to burn everything rather than bow. I am not proposing we burn everything, Reznov corrected. I am proposing we make them believe we would. Deterrence through demonstrated commitment, the same strategy that prevented nuclear wars on ancient Earth. The discussion exploded again, more heated this time. Elena listened in silence, weighing every argument. The pragmatists pointed to the risk of total annihilation. The resistors argued that protectorate was annihilation anyway, just distributed over generations. And then a new voice entered the conversation. My grandmother fled a totalitarian regime on Earth, said Marcus Webb, civilian representative from Arcadia, too young to be so serious. She always told me that freedom is not something you ask for. It is something you pay for, sometimes with everything. Silence. I don't want war, he continued. No one does. But my son was born under the sky of Arcadia. He has never seen Earth, but he grows up free. And if we accept the protectorate, his son will not grow up. He will grow up under supervision, limited, controlled. At what point do we stop being human and become just managed specimens? Eleanor saw tears in some faces, anger in others, but above all, recognition. Marcus had articulated what many felt, but feared to say. We need to vote, Chen said finally, his voice heavy. It's too big for an executive decision. This affects the entire species. The vote took 6 hours. Eleanor watched the numbers fluctuate on the holographic display, each percentage representing billions of destinies. The pragmatists made their passionate arguments for survival, the resistors for freedom. And slowly, painfully, the balance tipped. 52% in favor of rejection, 48% in favor of the protectorate. The 4% difference represented the collective will of 40 billion humans choosing the unknown over guaranteed submission. Elena felt the weight settle upon her again. She would be the messenger, the one who would utter the words that could condemn her species or free it. "Then it is decided," Chen said, his voice cracking slightly. "Ambassador Vasquez, you will return to the Galactic Council in 28 days. And you will tell them—" He paused, swallowing. "Tell them that humanity respectfully declines their offer of a protectorate. And if they activate total containment," Okonkwo asked, still resisting until the end. It was Jackson who answered, his voice firm. "Then we will find out if 80 years of preparation were enough, and if they weren't, at least our epitaph will say, 'We died free.'" The conference was adjourned. Elena stood alone in her office, looking at Earth through her station window. The blue planet spun serenely, unaware that its daughter species had just gambled its very existence. Her communicator showed messages from Reznov, coordinates of secret facilities, activation codes for war protocols, evacuation plans for 3 billion colonists from the condemned systems, and buried at the bottom, a personal file. Elena opened it. It was a photograph. Her granddaughter, Sophia, wearing a Mars Naval Academy uniform. 19 years old, bright eyes, confident smile. The attached message was simple. "Grandma, I hear you're facing gods tomorrow. Show them why they call us stubborn. Love, Sophie." Elena smiled through the tears. Gods, perhaps the Galactic Council was that. Ancient, powerful, incomprehensible. But Elena had studied mythology. She knew how those stories ended. The gods always underestimated the mortals. Until it was too late. 28 days passed like exhalations. Elena watched from her station as humanity transformed, not in panic as she half expected, but in crystalline focus. Decades of contingency planning sprang to life like a rehearsed symphony. Colonial transport ships, normally carrying supplies, now evacuated civilians from the 9 condemned systems. 3 billion people on the move, not in disorderly flight, but in methodical relocation. Children carrying school bags as they boarded transports for New Hope. Families tagging their belongings for cryogenic storage. Engineers dismantling entire factories for reconstruction in core territory. Elena saw broadcasts from Liberty, where the last colonists left domes they had built with their own hands. She saw the mayor of a small town, on horizon, lower the flag for the last time before blowing up the fusion reactors, ensuring the council would find nothing useful. There was no crying in the broadcasts. There was anger, determination, and something deeper that Elena took a moment to identify: pride. They were destroying their own homes, but they did it as an act of defiance. Every evacuated colony was a message. You will get nothing from us. Neither territory, nor resources, nor surrender. Project Prometheus emerged from the shadows like a waking dragon. Facilities that had operated under absolute secrecy now transmitted their capabilities to Fleet Command. Elena watched the technical reports with growing admiration. quantum warp drives that created no detectable waves in subspace, shield generators that operated on frequencies the Council's sensors were never designed to track, and the weapons, heavens, the weapons. Quantum rupture warheads that tore temporary holes in the spatial fabric, creating energy vacuums that collapsed anything nearby. Antimatter missiles encapsulated in containment fields that functioned like hand grenades compared to traditional bombs. Autonomous drones programmed with restricted AI, capable of maneuvers that would kill organic pilots through sheer G-force. And the crown jewel, dimensional camouflage, technology that bent space-time around a ship, making it not just invisible, but literally imperceptible, like trying to detect something that existed slightly displaced from reality. 80 years, Elena murmured, reading the files in her office. 80 years building this, while we smiled and signed trade treaties. Trust through verification? Reznov's voice replied through the secure communicator. Except we left nothing to verify. Every Prometheus facility was built using asteroid mining as cover. Every researcher had a fabricated history. Even supplies were routed through 20 shell companies. The Council said they knew about our research. They know about 15% of it. The programs we deliberately left visible, plausible defensive advancements that any civilization would develop, but the core, imperceptible. Reznov paused. Ambassador, I know this sounds militaristic, paranoid even, but when we entered the galactic arena, we saw how the game was played. Either you were strong enough to be respected, or you were meek enough to be ignored. We chose a third option. Strong enough to be feared. Strong enough to never need to prove it. But now, Reznov's voice carried weight. Now we find out if our bluff is solid. Elena returned to Zenith Station on the 28th day. This time, she did not come alone. 3 Earth Fleet escort ships accompanied the HMS Diplomacy, a calculated gesture, not provocation, but declaration. We are a sovereign civilization, and we present ourselves as such. The council chamber was fuller this time. In addition to the 17 main members, observers from dozens of smaller species occupied elevated galleries. Elena recognized some. The Thexali, with their iridescent plumes, the chitinous-shelled Colmar, even representatives of the shy nebula whisperers. All came to witness the human surrender. Kethesizar glowed in anticipatory blue tones as Eleanor took her pedestal. Ambassador Vasquez, I see you return within the established deadline. This demonstrates, at least, that your species understands punctuality. I presume you bring your government's formal acceptance of the Protectorate terms? Eleanor took a deep breath. Her heart beat steadily, controlled through decades of diplomatic training. Around her neck, discreet beneath the collar, a small transmitter was sending in this conversation to every human system in real time. 40 billion people watching. First Kethesizar, honored members of the Galactic Council, distinguished observers, she began, her voice clear and firm. I return as the representative of the Earth Alliance and all humanity. We deliberated your offer with the seriousness it deserves. We consulted our best scientists, strategists, and civilian representatives. We submitted the question to a direct vote among the governments of our 12 systems. A lengthy process for an inevitable conclusion, commented Avordim. But we appreciate the due consideration. The result of the vote, Elena continued, ignoring the interruption, was 52%. a narrow margin, reflecting the weight of this decision. There were passionate arguments on both sides. We recognize the disparity in power between our civilization and yours. We understand the potential consequences of our choice. Cethesizar leaned slightly forward. Then your species chose wisdom, acceptance of the protectorate, I presume. The transition terms can begin immediately. Our administrators are prepared to... First, Cethesizar, Elena interrupted softly. I apologize, but I am not finished. Absolute silence fell over the chamber. No species interrupted Cethesizar. It was simply inconceivable. Elena continued before he could respond. 52% voted against accepting the protectorate. Humanity respectfully declines your offer. The silence exploded into a cacophony. Voices in 17 different languages echoed simultaneously, translation systems struggling to process the chaos. The observers in Shoitsuya, the galleries moved agitatedly, entire species seeming to vibrate with shock. Cethesizar pulsed dark red, a color Elena's files identified as fury or deep disbelief. You decline. His voice cut through the noise like a blade. Do you understand what you are saying, Ambassador? This is not negotiation. It is not a proposal subject to counteroffer. It is a decree, an order established by consensus of 17 civilizations whose accumulated histories exceed 500,000 years. I understand perfectly. First, Elena maintained her upright posture. And it is precisely because I understand that I must speak clearly. Humanity does not accept that our destiny be determined by others, no matter how ancient or powerful. We have committed no crimes that warrant punishment. We have not violated treaties. We have not threatened innocent species. We are condemned not for our actions, but for your assumptions about our future intentions. Assumptions based on 50 millennia of observation. A synthetic intelligence counted. Patterns repeated in 97% of cases. Your indignation does not alter mathematics. Mathematics does not capture free will, Elena replied. You judge us guilty of crimes we never committed because other species committed them. That is not justice. It is systematized prejudice. It is prevention. Cethesizar had calmed to a controlled amber glow. And your rejection confirms exactly what we feared. Arrogance, stubbornness, inability to accept legitimate authority. These are characteristics of all species that eventually needed to be contained. Then contain us, Elena said calmly. If it is your intention to reduce humanity to a single system, 5 billion population, and perpetual supervision, then do it. But know that every step will meet resistance. Not violent, she quickly added, seeing senses light up, but total. Civil disobedience on a galactic scale, refusal to cooperate with administrators, economic sabotage through labor strikes. Making us a protectorate will cost more resources than governing 10 willing systems. A Kolmar, a rarely vocal species, spoke for the first time. You threaten the council with strikes? There was something that might be humor in its translated voice. I do not threaten, Elena corrected. I inform. Governance requires the consent of the governed. You can enforce temporary obedience through fear, but humans have long cultural memory. We resisted oppression on our own world for millennia. Some regimes fell in years, others in centuries, but all eventually fell. Not because they were militarily defeated, but because you cannot build sustainable order on a foundation of coercion. Cethesizar pulsed through several colors before stabilizing on a tone Elena could not interpret. "You are remarkable, Ambassador Vasquez. Truly, you stand alone in a chamber of beings who could disintegrate your planet with collective thought. Your species possesses 1,200 ships against our 3 million. Your most advanced systems are primitive toys, compared to what we built when your star was still a gas cloud. And yet you stand there, calm and utter defiance." He floated forward, rising from his seat for the first time Eleanor had witnessed. "This is exactly what we fear. Not your technology, not your numbers, but this irrational stubbornness, this refusal to accept inevitability. In our experience, species like this are impossible to peacefully incorporate into the galactic order. They always, eventually, need to be broken. Or, Elena suggested softly, you learn to coexist with species that value autonomy. The Council governs through rigid hierarchy, but perhaps the galaxy is large enough for multiple models. Partnership instead of domination. Partnership implies equality. You are infants. Infants grow, unless they are deliberately kept in cradles. The murmur in the galleries grew. Eleanor noticed something interesting. Several observer species were leaning forward, intensely focused. How many of them, she wondered, accepted protectorate under similar pressure? How many dreamed of freedom, but never had the courage to risk it? Cethacezar returned to his seat. "You force us to a demonstration. We do not wish this, Ambassador. Believe it or not, we take no pleasure in forced containment. But order must be maintained. If one species can defy the Council without consequence, others will follow. So I will give you one last opportunity. Return to your government. Explain that this path leads only to pain. Accept the protectorate, and the transition will be peaceful. And if not, then in 30 days, Council forces will begin active containment. Your first colony will be occupied, your fleet will be disabled, and each subsequent system will be processed until only one remains. This is inevitable, Ambassador. The question is not whether it will happen, but how much suffering your species will endure before accepting reality." Elena nodded slowly. "I understand, and I will take your message to humanity." She paused, then added, "But I will also take mine. In 30 days, when your forces arrive at our first system, they will discover something about humans that may not be in your 50 millennia statistics." "And what would that be?" Elena smiled, and it was not a gentle expression. "That we are a species that walked upright when lions hunted us. That we survived ice ages, plagues, and our own nuclear wars. That we reached the stars not because it was easy, but because it was hard. And that, when we are told something is inevitable..." She let the phrase hang for a moment, letting the silence build. "We tend to disagree." The chamber remained in absolute silence as Elena departed, her back straight, her steps firm. Behind her, 40 billion humans watching the broadcast exploded in celebration or fear. But they all knew one thing. The war had begun. Admiral Tharquan of the Crystallis Dominion had served the Galactic Council for 523 Earth years. He had pacified 14 minor rebellions, subjugated 7 recalcitrant species, and overseen the containment of 2 civilizations that refused to accept Council guidance. In all these conflicts, the outcome was preordained. His forces arrived, demonstrated overwhelming superiority, and the resistance evaporated like mist under a double sun. Today would be more of the same. expeditionary force consisted of 800 capital ships, each capable of vitrifying a planet's surface. Crystallis battle cruisers, whose particle beam weapons could slice through shields like paper. Vordim destroyers equipped with antimatter missiles guided by swarms of distributed consciousness. Synthetic intelligence frigates, fast and lethal, controlled by algorithm that processed tactics thousands of times per second. Against 1,200 human ships, it was absurd overkill. But the Council did not believe in inadequate measures. Entering the Liberty system in 3, 2, 1, announced his navigator. Space folded around the fleet, and suddenly they were there. Liberty, humanity's third colonized system, 2 habitable planets orbiting a G-class star. Recorded population, 6 billion. Significant industrial capacity. Seat of the Third Earth Fleet. Dark One examined the tactical displays with 3 of his 6 sensory eyes, the other 3 monitoring data subchannels. Report. Admiral, we detect no defensive energy signatures, no ships in orbit, space stations showing minimal activity. It's as if... The sensor officer paused, confusion coloring his crystalline harmonic, as if the system is abandoned. Impossible. 6 billion cannot evacuate in 30 days. Confirming again, sir. We detect residual life signs on the planets, but at drastically reduced levels. We estimate less than 100,000 combined individuals. And those appear to be mostly in remote facilities. Dark One felt his first flicker of concern. This did not follow the pattern. Subjugated species fought desperately or surrendered immediately. They did not execute organized mass evacuations and then simply vanish. Deep scan, I want every ship, every station, every satellite catalogued. The results arrived in minutes. The Third Earth Fleet, which should contain 240 ships, was absent. The orbital stations were running on automatic mode, and on the planetary surfaces, the major cities showed disturbing signs. Sir, his intelligence officer reported, the cities have not just been evacuated, they have been prepared. We detect antimatter signatures at strategic points in every population center. Fusion reactors operating at maximum capacity, but with no load connected. This looks like a trap, Dark One completed, his crystalline matrix pulsing warning orange. They have turned their own cities into bombs. I recommend we remain in high orbit and process the system remotely. His second-in-command suggested we send drones first. Dark One considered. Council orders were clear. Occupy and pacify, but occupying radioactive rubble served no purpose, and the humans, apparently, were willing to sacrifice their own worlds to deny territory. Remarkable and deeply concerning. Send reconnaissance drones to the primary planet's main city. Passive configuration, observation only. He paused, then added, and keep the fleet in dispersed defensive formation. Something is wrong here. The drones descended through the atmosphere, transmitting high-resolution images. New Liberty, the capital, revealed itself as a ghost city. Buildings intact, but empty. Transport vehicles neatly parked. Even decorations in public gardens still in place. As if the entire population simply evaporated, except for the devices. Confirming, the weapons specialist reported. Every major structure contains an antimatter charge. Conservatively, if detonated simultaneously, it would produce an explosion equivalent to 50 gigatons, lethal radius of 400 kilometers. Who would set up explosives in their own homes? A young Vordim officer questioned. Someone, Dark One replied slowly. who values denial to the enemy above property preservation, or someone trying to send us a message. The message arrived 30 seconds later. Broadband transmission, basic encryption, easily broken. A human face appeared on the screens, a woman of approximately 50 Earth years. Grey hair pulled back in a practical knot. Impeccable military uniform. Admiral of the invading force. She began in perfect Galactic common language. I am Admiral Jessica Nakamura, Commander of the 3rd Earth Fleet. Welcome to the Liberty System, or what used to be. Tharquan signaled to keep the channel open, but not respond. Let her speak. You are finding that there is not much to conquer here. 6 billion civilians evacuated over 28 days. Impressive logistics, if I may say so. They are safe in core systems now. What remains is infrastructure we carefully prepared for you. The image changed, showing technical schematics of the antimatter charges. Every city is now a containment trap. Any attempt to deactivate one device triggers a cascading detonation of all others, land-ground troops, and the planet turns to ash. It is guaranteed mutual destruction on a continental scale. Tharquan felt reluctant admiration. Destroying their own colonies to deny the enemy was a tactic of desperation, but the execution was flawless. But perhaps, Nakamura continued, you are smart and remain in orbit. Just bombard from the safety of space, right? Here's the problem with that. The transmission changed again, this time to sensor data showing subtle energy signatures in the system's asteroid belt. Dozens of them. Hundreds. My fleet did not run away. Nakamura smiled. We just got quiet. Small ships, Admiral. 1/10 the size of your cruisers. Quantum propulsion, drives that leave no warp signature, dimensional camouflage that bends light, and gravity. For the last 30 days, while you prepared for glory, we prepared for war. Her smile vanished. Here are your options. Withdraw now, and we consider this an unsuccessful reconnaissance. Your crew returns home, attempt ground occupation, and Liberty dies. Yours and ours. Remain in orbit trying to locate us, and you will eventually discover that small ships can do a lot of damage when they don't follow your rules of engagement. Or, her voice turned cold, as vacuum, you can try to destroy us. But we are prepared to trade every one of our ships for 10 of yours. And unlike the Council, we don't have 3 million ships. We only have 1,200, which means everyone matters. Every crew has a name. Every captain went to my wedding or their parents' funeral. We fight because we have no choice. You fight because you were ordered to. The transmission paused. So tell me, Admiral, how many of your 800 ships are you willing to lose conquering an empty system? Because I promise you, it will be expensive. The transmission ended. Silence gripped Tharquan's command bridge. Even his veteran crew looked shaken. This wasn't like previous rebellions. Those were disorganized, emotional, easily crushed by a show of force. This was premeditated, calculated, cold. Sir, his tactical officer reported, detecting multiple engine activations in the asteroid belt, confirming at least 300 distinct signatures. Small, fast. Movement pattern suggests swarm coordination. Battle configuration, Tharquan ordered. Shields maximized, weapons hot. If they want to show teeth, we'll see if they can bite. It was his mistake. The human ships didn't attack head-on. They didn't form battle lines or execute traditional maneuvers. Instead, they exploded out of the asteroid belt at speeds that violated every known safety protocol, accelerating at 8 Gs, which should have liquefied organic crews. But humans, Dark One realized with growing horror, had developed inertial compensation that allowed their pilots to survive what should have been instant death. Or perhaps the thought was even more disturbing. They simply didn't care about safety when the alternative was defeat. Multiple contacts, 0.6 c relative velocity, impossible to intercept with conventional weapons. The small human ships, each no larger than a frigate, danced through the Council formation like predators among a herd. Antimatter missiles launched at relativistic speeds turned 3 cruisers into superheated plasma before their shields were even fully activated. Return fire, targets updating in real time. But the humans didn't maintain predictable trajectories. They executed combat maneuvers that Tharquan's tactical computers flagged as suicidal. 90-degree vector changes at speeds that should have torn the ships apart. And somehow, the human craft held together. 10 minutes into the engagement, Tharquan had lost 47 ships. The humans had lost 12. All units retreat to high orbit. Delta 7 defensive formation. The Council fleet regrouped, shields interwoven into a solid wall of energy. Finally, the humans slowed, maintaining a respectful distance. Nakamura appeared on the screens again. 47 to 12, she observed clinically. Almost 4 to 1. Better than I expected, honestly. You have, 753 ships now? We have 288 functional. Want to keep going? In 3 hours, you'll have 400 ships. We'll have 100. And then you can occupy Ashes. Dark One felt something he hadn't experienced in centuries. Doubt he could win, technically, but the cost would be absurd. Lose half his fleet to conquer a system the enemy would destroy anyway. The Council will not accept defeat, he said finally, opening a communication channel. We aren't asking you to accept it, Nakamura replied. Just to recognize reality. You can destroy us, eventually, but it will cost you dearly. Every system you try to take, every planet you try to occupy, we will bleed you dry. And unlike you, we don't have an empire of millions of worlds to absorb losses. We only have our 1,200 ships, which means every single one will fight like it's the last. Because maybe it is. Tharquan cut the channel. He looked at his crew, seeing uncertainty reflected in every crystalline face, every organic mass, every synthetic light pattern. Sir, his second-in-command said quietly, I recommend returning to Zenith Station for consultation with the Council. This situation exceeds mission parameters. It was an acknowledgement of something Tharquan struggled to admit. The Council, for the first time in 50,000 years, had encountered an enemy that didn't care about the inevitability of defeat, only the cost of victory. And that changed everything. News of the Battle of Liberty ripped through the galaxy like a shockwave. Species that had spent millennia under Council rule murmured in private channels. Invincibility had been broken, not completely, not definitively, but broken nonetheless. And in the dark corners of civilized space, dangerous ideas began to germinate. If the humans could resist, maybe others could too. At Zenith Station, Kethesizar faced something he hadn't experienced in 3 millennia of life. Dissension within the Council itself. 47 ships. The voice of a Vordim representative echoed through the chamber. We lost 47 capital ships conquering exactly nothing. The Liberty system remains unusable. the human ship's intact, and now other species are questioning our authority. Temporary, Cethacizar replied, but his light pulsed in tones that betrayed uncertainty. We escalate the response. 2,000 ships for the next system. We will crush the resistance through absolute force. And we will lose 200 instead of 47. A synthetic intelligence calculated coldly. The humans are not fighting to win battles. They are fighting to make every victory of ours Pyrrhic. It is a strategy of attrition, and it will work, given sufficient temporal scale. Then what do you propose? Cethacizar demanded. Negotiation? With a species that defied a direct decree? That would set a precedent. That would destroy galactic order. The galactic order, another Crystallis said softly, is already being questioned. 6 protectorate species have submitted formal petitions in the last 72 hours, not for direct independence, but for terms review. They are testing the limits. The humans encouraged them. While the council debated, humanity planned. In the command bunker, buried beneath the Martian polar ice caps, Admiral Jackson convened the species' best strategists. Holograms filled the cavernous room, each representing an expert in asymmetric warfare, intelligence analysis, or technological innovation. Liberty was a tactical victory, Jackson began, without preamble. We proved we can bleed them, but we cannot win a war of attrition. 3 million ships against 1,200. Even with our 4-to-1 kill ratio, eventually we run out of ships. They will still have millions. We need to change the calculus, Dr. Kowalski said. She brought up a holographic schematic of a massive structure. Nexus Station, the Galactic Council's largest shipyard, located in a neutral system, equidistant from all member territories. It produces 60% of all Council warships. Impossible to attack, an intelligence officer objected. Defenses are impenetrable. 50,000 weapon platforms, 100,000 defense drones, a permanent garrison of 500 capital ships. Impenetrable to conventional attack, Kowalski agreed. But we are not conventional. She expanded the hologram. Project Wraith, developed over the last 15 years at the Prometheus Sigma facility. Ships equipped with next-generation dimensional cloaking. Not just visual invisibility or energy masking, literal partial displacement into a parallel dimension. Sensors cannot detect what doesn't fully exist in our space-time. Jackson leaned forward. Capabilities? 12 prototypes, small, equipped for infiltration, not prolonged combat. Each carrying a quantum rupture warhead, a weapon that tears a temporary hole in the spatial fabric. The collapse lasts only microseconds, but the energy release is equivalent to a miniature supernova. 12 ships, Jackson murmured, against 50,000 defensive platforms. We don't need to destroy the defenses, Reznov interjected. He had dark circles under his eyes, the result of 72 hours without sleep coordinating operations. We just need to reach the Nexus core, the central antimatter reactor. 12 warheads detonated simultaneously in its containment chamber. He mimed an explosion, destroying the Council's shipbuilding capacity for decades. Kowalski completed. Maybe centuries, depending on how complete the destruction is. Without Nexus, they can't replace losses. Suddenly, our attrition rate becomes their problem too. It's a suicide mission, Jackson stated. Even with the cloaking, the chances of 12 ships reaching the core undetected are 23%, a limited artificial intelligence calculated, assuming perfect execution and zero margin for error. 23%, Jackson repeated. He looked around the room. We're talking about asking 144 crew members to fly into near certain death. We're talking about asking for volunteers. Reznov corrected. No one will be ordered. But if we pull this off, we change the balance of the entire war. Jackson closed his eyes for a long moment. Then he nodded. Call for volunteers, but I will interview them personally. No one goes on this mission without fully understanding the odds. 527 people volunteered in the first 6 hours. Jackson spent 3 days interviewing every single one. Veteran pilots with decades of experience. Young engineers, barely out of the academy. A field medic who insisted someone needed to be there to treat the wounded, no matter how unlikely survival was. He chose 144, 12 crews of 12, and among them, insisting on commanding the lead ship, was Lieutenant Commander Sofia Vasquez, Elena's granddaughter. Absolutely not, Elena declared when she found out. She had emergency traveled to Mars, storming into Jackson's office. She's 19. She's 23, Jackson corrected gently. And she is the best Wraith pilot we have trained. Sophia has an instinct for dimensional navigation that no one else demonstrates. It's like she thinks in 4 dimensions naturally. I don't care if she thinks in 12 dimensions. She is my granddaughter, Jackson. The only family I have left. And she is an adult volunteer in military service, Jackson replied, his voice firm but not without compassion. Elena, I cannot and will not veto her choice. Not when 56% of the crews have family members pleading with us to reconsider. Elena trembled, tears finally overcoming her diplomatic control. I started this. I could have accepted the protectorate. I could have chosen survival. You chose freedom, Jackson said softly. And now your granddaughter chooses to fight for it. This is what it means to be human, Elena. Not just to survive, but to decide what is worth living for. And dying for, if necessary. Elena found Sophia that night in the Naval Academy Observatory. The young woman was studying star charts of Nexus Station, memorizing every approach, every angle. Grandma, Sophia smiled when Elena entered. I knew you'd come. To try and make you change your mind. To say goodbye, Sophia corrected. She gestured to a chair nearby. Sit down. We need to talk. Elena sat, feeling the weight of every one of her 62 years. When you were little, I told you stories about the stars. I promised you that one day you would see them all. And now I'm going to see the most important one of all. Sophia interrupted. Grandma, I know the odds. 23%. But someone has to be in that 1 in 5 that makes it. Why not me? Because you have your whole life ahead of you. I have life now, Sophia replied, and I want it to mean something. You stood in the council chamber alone, surrounded by alien gods, and you said no, not because it was safe, because it was right. Now it's my turn. Elena took her granddaughter's hand. You are so much like your grandfather. Stubborn, idealistic, brave to the point of foolishness. Would he have volunteered? Without hesitation, Sophia smiled. Then you already know I won't change my mind. They spent the night talking about childhood on Mars, about Sophia's first day at the academy, about post-war dreams that might never happen. When dawn arrived, Elena hugged her granddaughter with a strength that spoke of all a grandmother's love and terror. "Come back to me," she whispered. "I'll do my best," Sophia promised. "And if I don't make it, Grandma, know that I died, doing exactly what I chose to do. There is no more honorable surrender than that." Operation Prometheus launched 7 days later. 12 Wraith ships, each no larger than a corvette, equipped with technology representing 80 years of secret research. The best pilots, engineers, and strategists humanity could offer. Elena watched from the mission control room as the ships vanished, sliding partially into the parallel dimension. Sensors confirmed cloaking activation. Then, nothing. Just radio silence and waiting. The journey would take 12 days. 12 days of agony, with no communication possible, not knowing if Sophia was alive or dead. Elena spent those days working, coordinating evacuations of the remaining systems, discreetly negotiating with protectorate species, beginning to question the Council, preparing contingencies in case Operation Prometheus failed. But at night, alone in her quarters, she looked at a photo of Sophia in uniform and prayed to any god who was listening. On the 12th day, the sensors detected something. A massive energy explosion in the sector where Nexus Station was located. The signature was consistent with a quantum rupture. 12 distinct signatures. Simultaneous. The control room erupted in contained celebration. It worked. Somehow, against all odds, it worked. Then came the hardest part, waiting to find out how many crews survived. 6 hours later, signals began to arrive. Faint, distorted by distance, but definite. Ships emerging from dimensional cloaking, transmitting identification codes. 1 ship, 2, 3. Elena stopped breathing. 4, 5. Please, she thought. Please. 6, 7, 8. The video transmission arrived, fragmented, but clear enough. Sophia appeared on the screen, face smudged, uniform torn, but smiling. Mission accomplished, Command. Nexus destroyed, returning to base. And Grandma, she added, looking directly into the camera as if she knew Elena was watching. I said I'd do my best. Elena collapsed into her chair, sobs of relief and pride shaking her body. 8 ships out of 12. 128 survivors out of 144. But Nexus Station, the industrial heart of the Galactic Council, a 50,000-year-old jewel of construction, was reduced to fragments. The gods could bleed. And now, the entire galaxy knew. The destruction of Nexus Station sent shockwaves that transcended physics. The Galactic Council, for the first time in 50 millennia, called an emergency session not to pronounce judgment, but to debate its own survival. Cethesizar watched the fragmentation in real time. 3 member species had abstained from voting on retaliation against the humans. 2 others openly suggested that perhaps containment was a disproportionate response. And most disturbing, 12 protectorates had submitted formal petitions demanding a review of their status. The order he had maintained for 3,000 years was crumbling. The humans destroyed our primary shipyard, he declared, trying to rally consensus. Thousands of lives lost. Trillions of credits in infrastructure reduced to wreckage. This demands a total response. Full mobilization of all fleets. To what end? A Vordim voice was weary. So we lose 10,000 ships taking their remaining systems to create martyrs who will inspire rebellions in a dozen other sectors. We have already lost Cethesizar. We just haven't admitted it yet. Lost, Cethasaur pulsed intense red. They have fewer than 1,000 functional ships. We still have millions. And without Nexus, every lost ship takes years to replace instead of weeks, a synthetic intelligence calculated. Our numerical advantage shrinks with every confrontation, and the humans have demonstrated they will fight until the last ship. We can defeat them, eventually, but the council that emerges from that victory will be broken, impoverished, and vulnerable to challenges from other species observing our weakness. So what do you propose? Cethasaur demanded. Negotiation with terrorists who destroyed Nexus? Resistance fighters, a younger Crystallis corrected. Terrorists attack civilians. The humans have been meticulous in targeting only military assets. Even on Liberty, they ensured complete evacuation before booby-trapping their cities. They fight according to codes of war, not chaos. Semantics. No. A new voice interjected. It was the representative of the Thexali, a merchant species that rarely spoke on military matters. It is a distinction that matters to other species. The humans are not monsters. They are desperate, and there is a difference. Cethasaur felt the ground shifting beneath him metaphorically. The coalition that had governed for eons was fragmenting, not through external conquest, but internal dissension. The humans didn't need to destroy the council militarily. They just needed to last long enough for the council to destroy itself through disagreement. I call for a vote, he said finally. Continue total containment or open a negotiation channel. The vote took hours, and for the first time in his 3,000-year life, Cethasaur saw his proposal rejected. 11 votes in favor of negotiation, 6 against. The order had changed. Elena received the transmission at her station 3 days later. Not an ultimatum this time, not a decree. A formal request for a negotiation meeting in neutral territory. She read the message 3 times, looking for a trap, but the tone was unmistakable. The council was offering to talk. Is it a trick? Jackson asked when she convened the Security Council meeting. Maybe, Elena admitted. Or they are genuinely fractured. Intelligence reports that 3 member species have threatened to withdraw from the Council if the war continues. They cannot afford further fragmentation. Then we go, Sophia said. She had returned from Prometheus, a hero, but she carried the weight of the crews who didn't return in her eyes. But we go prepared. The dead moon of Epsilon Eridani was chosen as the neutral site. No atmosphere, no life, no strategic value. Just rock, floating in the vacuum, equidistant from human and council territories. 2 fleets arrived simultaneously. 100 council ships, a humble reduction from their usual display of power. 20 human ships, including the HMS Diplomacy, carrying Elena, and for the first time, they met not as judge and accused, but as negotiators. The temporary habitat dome was constructed collaboratively, human and alien engineers working side by side in tense but efficient silence. Inside, a round table. No elevated seat for the council. Physical equality reflecting a new political reality. Cethasaur entered first, his crystalline form pulsing in colors Elena now identified as melancholy. The other 16 council members followed, plus 24 observers from protectorate species. Elena entered with Sophia, Jackson, Reznov, and Kowalski. 5 humans representing 40 billion. Ambassador Vasquez, Cethasaur began. His voice lacked the absolute authority of before. You destroyed 50,000 years of heritage, killed thousands, demonstrated that humans are exactly as dangerous as we feared. We demonstrated, Elena corrected gently, that we will not accept domination. There is a difference between dangerous and threatening. A guard dog is dangerous. A predator is threatening. We are the former, not the latter. But you try to chain us without provocation. Statistics are not destiny, Sophia interjected. Technically, it was a breach of protocol, but Eleanor let it slide. You judged us by the actions of other species. That is prejudice, not prophecy. A murmur ran through the Protectorate observers. Elena realized many were recording every word. What do you want? Cethacezar asked finally. You cannot defeat the Council militarily, and we cannot eliminate you without a cost that destabilizes our own order. So we have reached an impasse. What is your proposal? Eleanor took a deep breath. This was the moment she had prepared for. First, full recognition of human sovereignty. All 12 systems remain under our control, with no external oversight or population limitations. Impossible, Avordim began. Second, Eleanor continued, permanent seats on the Galactic Council for Humanity and for 4 Protectorate species of our choosing, elected by vote among all Protectorates. The silence was absolute. You ask that we dismantle the entire Protectorate system? Cethacezar pulsed colors of shock. We ask that you recognize that order based on coercion is not order. It is oppression. And oppression eventually always breeds resistance. We are only the first. If you do not change the system, there will be others. And next time, perhaps they won't be as discerning as we were about targets. This is blackmail, a Crystallis representative accused. It's reality, Reznov countered. You created a galaxy where species choose between submission or extinction. We refused both and invented a third option, sustainable resistance. Now others will see that it's possible. You can spend the next 1,000 years crushing rebellions one by one, each one weaker than the last, until the Council collapses under its own weight. Or you can evolve. And in exchange, Cethacezar asked, what does humanity offer? Genuine cooperation, Elena said. Our Prometheus technologies, developed at your expense, shared freely. Our industry, rebuilding what we destroyed at Nexus. And something more valuable, proof that young species can be partners, not just subjects. Partners, Cethacezar tested the word, with infants. Infants who just broke your most expensive toy, Sophia observed with a dry smile. Maybe it's time to recognize that we've grown up. The negotiations lasted 18 days. They were heated, frustrating, and repeatedly on the verge of collapse. But for the first time, both sides were truly listening. The final agreement, which would become known as the Treaty of Epsilon Eridani, revolutionized the galactic order. Complete human sovereignty over all colonized systems. Protectorate status abolished for all species within 50 years, with transition supervised by a joint committee. 5 new seats on the Galactic Council, including humanity. Mutual reparations. Humans would help rebuild Nexus. The Council would compensate human war costs. And above all, formal recognition that self-determination was a right, not a privilege. When Elena signed the treaty, her hand trembled slightly, not from fear, but from recognition of the moment's weight. 40 billion humans had bet everything, and somehow, impossibly, they won. Not through conquest, through stubbornness, through refusal to accept that others would define their limits, through a willingness to pay any price for freedom. Sophia stood beside her, along with Jackson, Reznov, and Kowalski, all the people who had made this possible. Cesar signed on the council's side, his crystalline signature glowing under the artificial light. Ambassador Vasquez, he said, as they sealed the document, "Do you understand that you have just changed the galaxy forever? There is no returning to the old system." "Good," Elena replied. "Old systems tend to benefit the old. Time to let the young have a voice." "Humans," Cesar said, and for the first time, Elena heard something that might have been respect in his voice. So frustratingly, infuriatingly, magnificently stubborn. Perhaps that is exactly what a stagnant galaxy needed. 3 months later, Elena was at her station orbiting Mars, watching something she never imagined seeing. Ships from dozens of different species arriving for the first expanded galactic assembly. Not just the old council, but representatives from worlds that had been silenced for millennia. Sophia entered her office, now promoted to commander, and slated to lead a cultural exchange program with ex-protectorate species. "Grandma, are you coming? The ceremony starts in an hour." In a minute, Eleanor looked out the window at Earth, the blue planet that had given rise to such an improbable species, evolutionarily weak compared to alien predators, technologically backward compared to ancient civilizations, numerically insignificant compared to empires of trillions, but possessing something no statistic could capture: will, stubbornness, an absolute refusal to accept that destiny was inevitable. "Are you okay?" Sophia asked gently. "I'm thinking," Eleanor said, "about all the choices that brought us here. If I had accepted the protectorate that first day—" "You never would have," Sophia said with certainty. "And if by some miracle you had, other humans would have refused. It's part of who we are. We can't help it. It's coded into our DNA, forged through 100,000 years of survival against impossible odds." Eleanor hugged her granddaughter. "Thank you for flying Prometheus, for coming back to me, for being exactly as brave and foolish as your grandfather would have been." "Family," Sophia smiled, "we tend towards shared characteristics." They walked to the ceremony together. Elena took her seat in the new Galactic Assembly, not as a supplicant or an accused, but as an equal. Around her, representatives of species that only months ago lived under protectorate now sat with their own voice. Cesar opened the session. "The first expanded Galactic Assembly is now in session. We have much work ahead of us. The transition from the old order to the new will not be easy. There will be challenges, conflicts, perhaps even failures. But for the first time in 50,000 years, we will face these challenges not as dominators and dominated, but as—" He paused, searching for the word. "Partners," Elena suggested. "Partners," Cesar agreed. "May the ancestors forgive us, but perhaps it is time to try something new." The assembly began its first deliberation, the establishment of mixed colonies where multiple species would work together as equals. It was a small step, but symbolically immense. That night, Elena returned to her quarters and wrote in her personal journal, as she had since her first day of diplomatic service, "Today, humanity officially took its place among the stars, not as conquerors, not as victims, but as a species that refused to accept the limits others tried to impose. It cost lives, it cost worlds, it cost almost everything we built. But it was worth it, because we proved something fundamental. That destiny is not written by ancient ancestors or powerful empires. It is forged by those brave enough to pick up a hammer and shape their own future. The stars were no longer a distant dream. They were home. And that home was won not through superior force, but through a refusal to bend the knee. What better epitaph could a species wish for? She closed the journal and looked out the window at a galaxy that now, finally, recognized humanity not as a threat or a curiosity, but as a force that had changed the order of eons. And across thousands of worlds, among countless species, an idea began to spread. A dangerous idea. A liberating idea. If the humans could defy the gods and win, maybe others could too. The awakening had begun, and the galaxy would never be the same.